I'm here with my friend Laure Jackson. Hello, Anne.
Hello, it is great to be here. Good to see
It is, and you've got your Santé top on.
you. I do, I do. I was just like, yes, feeling very casual. No, I was working this morning, down at my centre. So that's why my uniform that I like to wear down there because it's lovely and casual and warm and hopefully friendly.
Awesome. And we're doing a series on the senses, which is sort of your bread and butter. And just to quickly preview this one, we've done hearing or audio processing. We've done sight, visual processing. We've done smell, which I call taste processing, and you had a better word for.
Olfactory.
Which sounds much fancier than taste processing. We've also done touch processing, tactile
Tactile?
something.
Mhm.
There we are.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to look at taste. Now, these are the five basic senses you probably heard about in school. We all think of these five. However, what's exciting is over the last year, we have learned that there's five senses. Then there's another two, which you probably don't know about. And then there's another group of senses. And that's what we're working on, isn't it? We're working through these basics and we'll get more into the involved stuff as well.
Yeah, it's great.
But before we get back into the senses, just tell us a bit more about Santé, because we don't often see that logo. So just tell us what's Santé and just talk to us a bit more about the centre that you have in Jersey, I suppose, and how is that helping you do your job?
Yeah, it was really interesting about my mum is French, hence the word or the name Anne Laure, which nobody ever pronounces that way because it's either Anne Laure, which is I was spent a lot of time in Northern Ireland, so Anne Laure was very much how it was, and or Anne when I was growing up here in Jersey, it was just like let's cut it short. But yes, mum being French, I was trying to decide when I was trying to think about who I am as you do, anybody who's growing a business or thinking that they want to step out and do something a little bit different, what is it about what I do? And it was all about health, but it wasn't just normal health. I didn't yet know back then it was about sensory health. And that's why it's really special now that santé, also not only meaning health in French, and good health, you would say santé also for cheers, which is like, you would clink your glass together as a cheers. So it's the sense of a celebratory, lovely to meet you. I'm very glad you're here. I'm very glad we connected. So cheers and to your good health. So that's where the whole santé thing came from. And over time, as I specialized more and more into sensory processing and integration, it then became clear that actually being a sensory health coach was who I was becoming because it was much more about equipping and empowering others rather than me just doing pure training or just doing pure occupational therapy, specializing in that area. And then the thumbprint came about because I realized that every single thing that I do is about finding how we are each uniquely, wonderfully, fearfully made. So then it was about finding our own sensory thumbprints. So we have the santé for good health and cheers and every blessing to you, plus the thumbprint, which is how we are uniquely made. And if there are certain things about how our bodies have developed that are just getting in the way, that aren't as integrated as they could be, well, then my job is to help coach and to do therapy and to train and to help people thrive and learn how to manage their sensory needs, treat their sensory needs where we can, so we get that flourishing in sensory health.
Um, I think about the thumbprint thing, and the thing is, even I can work out. Well, I wear glasses. You don't wear glasses right now, so even the most basic rudimentary thing. Obviously, I'm wearing a pair of glasses, and you aren't obviously wearing a pair of glasses. But that's to do with what we see. It changes. We have a filter. Literally, I have a glass filter on my eyes. But in effect, you're talking not just about glass filters, although I suppose hearing aids, glasses are aids for sight. So there's the physical elements, but then I guess internally, as we've talked about, there's going to be, metaphorically speaking, not an actual one, but you're going to have a pair of glasses inside your head somewhere that is filtering how you see things, and your job sometimes is to tweak the prescription on the lens.
Yeah, on that internal stuff, exactly. And also to educate people that if, for example, their proprioceptive vestibular systems that we will talk about, if they're not well integrated, that we can give them strategies and treatment techniques and things that they can do during the day. But some people think that, okay, we've got used to them doing a movement break, or they do that 5-minute walk before they go, as they arrive in school or whatever. And then they think, oh, they're fine now. Let's stop doing that. And it's just like, no, just like you wear a pair of glasses and you keep them on because it keeps you functioning. We need to keep doing these sensory treatments, these sensory strategies to keep people in the best place. So I think that's why glasses are a great example of actually just when something's working, it doesn't mean that you then think, all right, I can take it away now. It doesn't. If we are going to remove anything, it has to be systematically done. Otherwise, yeah, you are blind again. You go back to not being able to see as well as you could.
Yes, blurring is fine when you're asleep. It's not so good when you're trying to drive a car,
No.
for example. Okay, so I just really quickly, I went to the France 3 times at school on exchange trips, and there are a few things about the senses that I suppose nobody kind of prepared me for, and some of the smells are different. Some of the foods smells are different. Just that one because herbs are used differently in different quantities, and you know, the French stick, the classic French stick, was brought home, and it smells unbelievably good in France. But even that was different. The sound of the bread was different to the UK. So even just the really simple things like a French stick or the smell of cooking is different. And I was actually quite tired out by some of those sensory changes, which
Mm.
I hadn't anticipated just going and living in someone's home for a week or 10 days.
Mm. Mm. And that is that sensory health at its most basic, because we don't recognize how much we are processing in everyday walking, getting up, eating, sleeping, moving around a place. If that place is different, everything is different about it,
Mm.
just as you're describing. And it is tiring. It is tiring for the brain to be you step up a level in your more conscious awareness, and you're processing all of that, because when it's familiar, your brain doesn't need to concentrate on it as much because it trusts what it is perceiving. Whereas you go to a different environment, smell, sight, sounds, movements, everything is different. And your brain goes on alert, just raises its ability to perceive, and it's almost like the threat value of the senses. How much more do I need to be aware of something here, because I'm not sure I can trust this. And so many of our senses are for protection. And a taste that we will, going on to that's a massive one as far as protection, because we eat something that's poisonous, and that's it. We're dead. It's that significant. I mean, yeah, if you fall off a wall, if you're stupid enough to climb across the top of a wall, a high wall, your brain will sense that you are high up, but most people don't do that. But yeah, our senses are there to protect us. It's a lovely thing.
It's how God's designed us to be, but protection and also enjoyment. I mean, the sky last night, the sunset, yes, it was an orange hue. It was amazing to see the color spectrum, but I also was thinking this is utterly beautiful. And the thing is, I couldn't appreciate the beauty of the sunset if one, I couldn't see it, and two, my brain didn't process that in some way to say, isn't that beautiful? And I had a sort of warm feeling inside from literally the sky. Now, why? How? I don't know. But I do know that I was able to appreciate it. And that is something I appreciate being able to appreciate.
Yes, yes. And that's one of the core things. If any of us can take anything away, that thankfulness, that gratitude, paying attention to those little things. And most of those things do come through the senses. I went for a walk with my youngest son, and we were reminiscing about our old homeschool days when they get the wellies on when they were little, and we'd go stomping in puddles and go for walks in the woodlands. We went out for a woodland walk, but it was raining, but it was gorgeous being out in the rain, because we went past a little lake in Jersey. We don't have kind of big lakes, but we don't have rivers either. We have little streams. But there was we could hear just the rain, and we stopped. And my son took a little photo. Okay, you can't get that with the sound, but he was really appreciating the visual. I was really appreciating the auditory, just the little sounds, and then hearing the birds. And slowing down and paying attention to those things is so good for our overall health as well as our sensory health.
I've just had a memory about a guy. I chatted with somebody and they were sharing about another person they had spent some time with. And this guy had PTSD from fighting in various wars and stuff. And when he finally chose to surrender and say, "Do you know what? I want to have a relationship with Jesus Christ," he suddenly heard birds. And it's just fascinating about the audio processing because of the damage mentally and emotionally from all he'd seen and
Mhm.
done. All of a sudden, his mind was released, kind of. It's not great English, but his mind was effectively released. He said, I've not really heard birdsong before, or I've forgotten that I wasn't hearing it because it just disappeared. And it was just the beauty of, I can hear a bird.
That's healing. That's the power of healing.
But it's more than his ears are fixed because his ears were fine before and after, which is the bit we talked about. It's not just about the physical mechanics of is sound going in, can it be mechanically processed? But then, I suppose, a mental processing as well, which obviously that's the bit that was broken. Now we can't see that, but his ears were fine before and after, but he couldn't hear the bird song. I
Mm.
guess because his brain was not really great wording, but it was too noisy for him to hear the brain because of the pain.
Yeah, totally.
Wow, there you go. Right, taste. Let's move on to taste. So we've looked at hearing, we looked at sight, we looked at smell, we've looked at touch. These are the basic words, and you did much better than I did at the wordings of those. So visual processing, audio processing, olfactory, which
Yeah.
I keep thinking it's got a D, but it's an E, OLE. And then we looked at tactile touch.
It doesn't even have an E on the end of it. It's just OL
Oh,
thing.
you see, this is why I'm not the occupational therapist.
But I tell you what, you're an audio, you're a radio man. I call it auditory processing, and you're audio. But that's obvious because you're a radio man. That's what you do. So
That's right. Okay, right. Well, let's get on to taste. What's the better version of taste that's a bit more
okay,
descriptive?
professional, gustatory.
Okay, right. That I think of food, which makes
Yeah,
sense.
yes, gustation. Yes, gustatory, and yes, any other food
Fine.
elements.
So, just talk us through taste. What happens? My limit is as far as there are little clusters of stuff on the tongue that taste various sort of elements. I suppose acid and alkaline, effectively. I think. So I'm drinking a cup of coffee and I can taste. I've got a bit of sugar. I've got a bit of milk. I've got some coffee. So I've got sweet and bitter and the milk as well. So that goes over and I identify I'm drinking coffee. And at the moment it's a bit cold because it's the bottom of the mug.
Yeah,
My brain can work all that out.
yeah, yeah. So sweet and salty, bitter, sour, umami. They're the main ones, but it's not just on the tongue. There's a debate as to whether it's an actual myth that there are certain parts of our tongues that taste certain things better. So that they used to say, it's still in debate whether it's still the case, that the tip of the tongue is for sweet, so that you can taste immediately if it's going to be good, so it doesn't go further in. If it's going to be more bitter and sour, which would tend to be more where we would steer away from, unless we know that a food is safe. But yeah, we have those taste receptors all the way around our mouth, not just on the tongue. We're looking about 5 to 10,000. Again, there's a debate as to whether we stay at that or whether there's actually millions. So I read different things. So it's just but essentially we have an awful lot of taste receptors, and combining with smell, because smell picks up the nuance. Taste will give you those basic elements, and when it combines with smell, that's when we get the beautiful detail in the things that we can eat and appreciate, as well as with our tactile receptors, and our proprioceptive receptors, like kind of come from the jaw, which tell us how crunchy something is or how soft, how much. And with the muscle, the tongue is a muscle, so that's our proprioceptive awareness as to how much work the tongue needs to move and move things around the mouth in order for us to actually chew properly and then to be able to swallow. So lots and lots and lots of our senses are involved in the mouth and in the process of eating. But taste is relatively straightforward on its own. It's just we don't eat things just using the tactile receptors. Sorry, the taste receptors. But
Unless you two. And you may
yeah,
well try to do that. Why do babies stick everything in their mouth? Because I mean, I've got 3 kids; they're grown up, but even then, you think, but why would you put that in your mouth of all the things? I know you've just done that, and it's not very nice, and you spat it out, and you're doing it again and again. So why do kids stick so much in their mouth? What's going on with processing that the mouth is so important?
Yeah, yeah. Well, until the eyes can take over, it's mainly tactile. We normally say it's tactile rather than taste. I'm sure um, years ago when we were needing to scavenge, it would have been if you didn't eat something, then you would die. So there was a sense of, putting things in your mouth and you'd be able to tell, is that something that you want to be eating or otherwise? But a lot of our perception of the touch of things come from when we put it in our mouths, so that eventually we don't need to put things in our mouths anymore. We can look at something and tell how hard or soft or furry or otherwise it's going to be. But that's because most of us have actually put it in our mouths and experienced it, because it's one of the earliest areas to develop in that processing. So, but yeah, it's an exploratory way, and I'm sure, yeah, long time past. Then basically, the mouth. If you didn't put things in your mouth, then you weren't going to survive. So,
And of course, for a toddler, when they start to teeth, then they want to put anything in their mouth that's hard enough that can help with the teething, because then it breaks the gum, the tooth comes out less painfully, and it aids the whole thing. So, in a
and
sense, it's
also, yeah, the deep touch pressure in there,
yeah.
just to remind folks that actually that does take away the pain, not just to help the like teeth break through, but that proprioceptive deep touch pressure input overrides the unpleasant sensation that is coming through.
Ah.
So deep touch pressure. And that's why if children are biting at nursery, or if it's a really good thing that children do have something else to bite on, like a dummy. So we have to watch the use of the dummies. There's real positives in that, but it opens up a big discussion, because we don't want teeth to be distorted because of what they're doing, but we mustn't take away things for people to chew on, because actually it's a real pain regulation for them to chew. And if they don't have it there, then they may well go to other children and bite on them instead.
I don't remember if I've ever shared this with you before, but I heard a dentist say, hate dummies, terrible for the mouth, awful, awful, dreadful things, never ever use a dummy. And I also heard some sort of health professional, I forgot what, I think it was somebody who helps with speech therapy, and they said dummies can be really helpful. It was just fascinating hearing these two medical professionals, terrible, dreadful, never use them, and wonderful and can be a great help. It was just
Mm.
fascinating. I may have got like completely the wrong way around, but I do remember that they were very opposite in
Yeah.
what they suggested.
Yeah. Welcome to the welcome to the world of professional opinion. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So I was sort of taking a bit of a gasp because I didn't know that a child chewing on something would actually help with the pain. I
Mm.
just thought it was this really hurts and I'm trying to help things along. I didn't know there was actually pain relief as well.
Yeah, it's an instinctive thing. Like if we bang into ourselves, we kind of rub the spot.
Yeah.
So we'll rub it better. Exactly the same thing, and we're doing it instinctively because we've realized over time, we've learned that actually that deep touch pressure is what will help remediate the pain.
I'm always baffled by not just that it's really cool, the different senses, but there's so much going on which we don't consider, like why is my child chewing the dog's rope? It's full of dirt, and yet actually it's probably quite hard and it's a bit squishy at the same time, and it's got sort of gentle ridges. So then you can think, well, okay, we'd rather them not chew that particular thing because it's been in the dog's mouth, but you can understand why a child would grab the dog's rope and start chewing it because it makes
Mm.
sense from a texture pressure point of view.
Absolutely. And believe it or not, I do recommend dog toys only because they are really indestructible. Some of our individuals, some of the ones that I work with, some of the families that I work with, that like, oh, what the children will chew through and what the adults will chew through is significant. So we need to find robust ones, and there's nothing more robust on the market than a dog toy. So
No, absolutely
if you
right.
do, definitely put that in the Christmas stocking. Just take away the fact that it happens to be a dog toy.
I love that, but there's nothing wrong with repurposing. We bought trousers one time for one of our boys. We're in a shop, and the lady who was helping us said, "Okay, don't worry about buying men's trousers. Buy trousers that fit because." Oddly, with this particular brand which we were trying to get because it was reduced, she said the ladies' sizes, they're actually identical except for the dimensions. They're not different cuts or shapes. So she said, forget the fact that it's ladies are identical in color. The only difference is the ladies' sizes seem to be sort of halfway between the men's sizes. She said, I'm wearing man's trousers because they fit better. So sometimes she said, Don't worry about it being man's. If it was pink and purple, then probably my boys wouldn't have wanted it. But these were black with black buttons with black stitching. There's nothing female about them. So she
Mm.
said, buy the ladies' trousers. So we did one time. The boys didn't like it. They cut off the label that said lady size, but it actually fitted better. So there's nothing wrong with repurposing when we need to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. Go for it.
I'm loving taste. I've got to go to the shark because I know you don't deal with sharks because you're not a biologist, but sharks, I'm led to believe, actually are like a 2-year-old toddler with a lot more aggression because they use their mouths to taste and to find and touch because they haven't got hands or fingers. So they bite things.
There you go. And I was learning that, yeah, cats can't taste sweet. So and different, yeah. So there are different elements of. Oh, else I think the dogs are quite remarkable in what they can actually taste. Yeah, there is definitely a difference, but that's quite funny about the sharks. That makes total sense, doesn't it? Yeah, they don't have hands and feet. They've only got
No,
their mouths to. Yeah.
but unfortunately for a shark, of course, by the time they've taken that first bite, that's usually not good for the person they've accidentally bitten. But that's the only way they can engage with the world around them. Now, we're not going into the biology of sharks. We're not, I mean, marine biologist. However, I do know one. But actually, toddlers, we can understand that they've got hands. Probably, they've probably got eyes. They've probably got ears that are working as a general rule, but then they're tasting things because, like you say, it's such a powerful thing. I love how God designed us to be and how all these things. I think, is it with wine I'm fascinated by this one. I think with wine tasting, you don't just drink the wine, you're supposed to breathe in as well, which is why it's so noisy when you see people doing wine tasting, because it's not just the taste of the wine, it's the smell of the alcohol in the wine
Mm.
mixed in for the fullest appreciation in order to say, well, that's got alcohol. Okay, that's fairly obvious. Oh, there's cherries and there's peaches and things. Well, that's probably more from the smell, I would imagine, because that's fragrance as opposed to flavor.
Mm, hmm. And that's where it's a beautiful thing. And if anybody is particularly sensitive in certain tastes, I'm always trying to find how is it that we've been made that if we don't need to change something, if it's not getting in the way of life, how can we use that? How can we channel that person into the best place for them to be, to live and to work? So the likes of wine tasters, those who are specialists in, just in food, food critics, food analysts. It's how can we that if you've got a really good sense of taste and texture and smell, then where can we put you? But even taste, let's find those jobs where you will excel because other people's senses are dulled in that area. If you're a smoker, that is going to dull your sense of taste. Obviously, if you're not very well, we all have colds, and we recognize the difference that how bland our food tastes, with that. So it's trying to match. If you have a particularly overreactive taste sense, which can be really negative and which causes some people to go to very bland food. But if you've got a highly perceptive, a highly discriminatory tactile taste sense, then let's find a job where you'll be such an asset to your company.
Which is the occupational therapy part of Anne Laure Jackson's specialist sensory occupational therapist.
Yes, whatever you do for you, and yes, it's not just employment, but the job of living. Yeah. How can we help you excel in the area of living and enjoying life and living life in full abundance?
What would be a classic issue of taste processing where you can say, well, we can fix that? I'm thinking about the classic one of children not liking sprouts, and one of the reasons they probably don't like sprouts is not because they're fussy, but sprouts are very, very strong flavor, and the tongues are very much more sensitive. They get degraded over time. So an 80-year-old might eat a sprout happily, and an 8-year-old might say, I'm going to be sick, because our ability to actually taste it, it's not fussy as much as it's too much going on. So what would be a classic one that you could actually help somebody with where taste is an issue for them?
Multi-sensory is often the best, but yes, children in particular are very perceptive to taste. So it's almost like also parents, it's good that they have different taste experiences, but just bring it down a level. So say, for example, if it was sprouts, it would be mixing the sprouts with something else. So they get the element of that taste of a sprout, that bitterness that is often there, but you might want to mix it with more butter, more of the fats, more of the salts to make it a little bit more palatable. And then as they grow older, they're able to manage the intensity of that taste better, or they don't. And there are loads of adults who won't want this sprout. But yeah, yeah, that's the idea. Just bring it down and gently and slowly, without any stress, without any pressure. That's one of the biggest things in the mealtime program that I have to help folk to develop their taste experiences. Is about doing it with so little pressure, but using all the other senses first as we build up to taste. So it is trying to see, can they tolerate the smell? Can they tolerate the feel of it if they actually touch it? What about seeing it? Sometimes even seeing food will cause some children to gag and just really not go near it, or walk away from the table, and they won't sit down at the table. So it's using all of the other senses first and very, very gently build up the taste ones where we can, because there are some families that they will only eat McDonald's chips, and if it's not McDonald's chips, they know the taste, the texture, the smell, everything is different about it, and they won't touch it. So they're really particular about the types of food that they have, and they stock up, and it's really hard when recipes change, when children have fixated on a particular brand and way of things tasting.
I find taste such a fascinating thing, because I was often described as a fussy child, a fussy eater. But as I got older and I had my own children, I started to understand, well, why don't they want to eat this thing? And then I started to look into it and realize broccoli is another classic one. It's quite a strong flavor. Well, are they being really fussy and disobedient, naughty and bad, or is it's overwhelming their senses? And actually, when we talk about all these sensory overload stuff and under processing and over processing, taste is probably, I would have thought, from all that we've done, it's the one that more of us would be most able to comprehend, because there are things of which we enjoy a lot. Quite often chocolate and sweets would be a classic, or perhaps that we can't stand, like broccoli or cauliflower or broccoli, sprouts, things that are very strong. But once you actually start to understand, and I think this is where taste maybe will help us across the rest of these senses, we can see children struggling who have seemingly no sensory processing issues, except for why won't I eat the broccoli? And it isn't so much it's green, it's the fact it's a very strong flavor. So we would put broccoli and mashed potato, mash it up, and then you've got all the goodness, and they don't know they're eating broccoli. A little bit of a parenting top tip from Andy B. But there are things you can do, but taste, it's more than, I suppose it's one of those, how am I trying to say this? It's I think it's the thing we can most of us would more understand, that this is something that we can see, and it's to do with sensory processing issues, because we also don't like things and do like things. And when it comes to sounds, it can be harder to think, well, I don't like that sound, I do like that sound. I quite like thrash metal. Don't play it very often. Quite like it. Not everybody would. And that's okay. That's different. I quite like to see a sunset. Not a big fan of concrete. I know there are those who love it and they polish it and they do amazing things with it. So we all have these likes and dislikes, but taste is the one that I think would probably be a gateway to understanding for more people, I think, of where sensory processing issues come in, because with taste, we can immediately think, this is sweet, this is sour, this is bitter, I like this, I don't like this, I like this a lot, I hate this a lot. I think it's possibly, I don't know, my little bad understanding is it's more of a gateway understanding of the senses. I don't know what you think of that.
I think anything, I suppose I'm in the world so much that I see a gateway in lots of areas, but I think on a very basic level, because there's not a lot of other complexities. It's taste. You like it, you don't, and we do obviously have the whole kind of broccolis, and we've all experienced children either as ourselves or our own children or somebody else's children, and they're really fussy, and so it is an easy one to be able to grasp and to see the effects of what it does and how difficult, because taste affects us socially. It affects our relationships. There is so much of our culture is based around food, because effectively taste is food. So anything that affects our food consumption, whether it means that we then eat less, whether it means that we eat more, whether we then get obese, whether we comfort eat, which will go along with a lot of the associations and memories, linking taste with those emotions and with those memories. Yeah, it has a massive impact on our life for being such a very small sense. With not that many aspects to it, the ramifications are huge.
I was called a fussy eater for years, and I don't think I was a fussy eater. I think I had over processing of flavors,
Right.
which meant I didn't want to eat stuff. I remember being made to eat marrow because my granddad had grown it, so we're going to grow it. And I remember being sick about it because it was I physically could not consume it. It wasn't a texture thing for me. It wasn't a taste. It was the strength of the flavor. I guess probably the smell, which was so great. I was being sick. Oh, it's just a fussy eater. Well, actually, now I would look at that differently and say, well, no, thanks for scarring me for life.
Well,
Um,
yeah.
but actually, I wasn't fussy. Actually, I was overly processing the flavors, and I couldn't process them because it was too much.
Mhm. Mhm. And the biggest takeaway, if anybody's listening who is dealing with it, or your own children, your own family, it's just like, no, let them be. Just keep introducing things. Next year, the year after, bit by bit. It's not as if you give up, but it's just like, just take any pressure off now. It really is not good for them, and certainly don't label the children, or certainly in front of them. You might have conversations with others just to explain and talk about how things are going, but don't be labeling children because of what they will put in their mouths or what they won't. There is a reason why they don't do certain things, and with maturity, certainly with treatment, things can go on a lot quicker, but with maturity things will ease as well. But it does no good for you as a parent, nor any good for them, having any pressure or any label that they're fussy eaters, or they're difficult, or just criticizing them for not eating when you spent all this time making something, and they're not going to eat it. Just take the pressure off, because you can really push people into eating disorders. It just breaks down your relationship. And I'm here more than anything, I think, to help develop relationships between peers, between parents, between family members, wherever we connect with people. Relationship, God is a God of relationships, and that's the core of who he is and how he is, and that's how he wants us to value and to have compassion, to help, to support other people. And that's one of the biggest things that we can prioritize if we can.
And all of that on the subject of taste. But it's important when we label someone, stick them in a box. It might help us, but it's not likely to help them. Oh, you're a fussy eater. The other one, I would always defend children when I was in children's ministry full time. Oh, they're just shy. And I'd say, well, they're probably not shy. You probably taught them to beware of strangers. They have no clue who I am. If they weren't shy, I'd be a little bit worried. Actually, I go the opposite way to defend the child, because being shy, we teach our children to be careful what they eat. Okay, this is sharp, pointy, don't eat glass. It's an obvious one that you would teach. Okay, it's a red hot poker, don't stick it in your mouth. There are basics there. But then there are more nuanced things later. But you're shy, you're fussy. Are they? Or are they just being wise and you're not, actually? Because children don't have adult filters. And all this processing, we're talking about the senses, but then there's kind of emotional filters as well of, well, should they trust that person? Don't we want our children to be just a little bit standoffish? Isn't that a healthy thing to breed in them? Make sure you don't just go with anybody. Surely that's a good thing, And it's the same with the senses. Don't just eat everything, and that's where the development helps. And I'm really enthralled by this simple five senses as I was taught in junior. I remember it in primary school, the five senses, but it was never really taught the importance of how it can affect our everyday life. So that's why I'm really loving these. Thank you, Anne.
Okay, thank you.
But it's fascinating, isn't it?
I love it. It's my life's work. It's it's that basic. I really enjoy sensory processing and integration. It's my life's work, and it's my business, and it's my I live, eat and breathe senses.
Right. If you want to know more about Anne, connect with her centre, Santé, in Jersey, or just connect with her generally. Go to our website, Pure247Radio, pure247radio.org/ALJ /ALJ at the end of our website, and it will take you through to Anne. You can connect with her in all sorts of ways. Anne Lord Jackson, thank you. We've done hearing, sight, smell, touch, and taste. if you want to use really basic words. And we will come back at some point soon with the other two processes, which I'm trying not to forget. And then there's the group of senses. So there's proprioceptive.
Yes.
Okay, that's one of the extra senses that you may not be conscious of. And then there's the other one which I had in my head before I had
Begins with a
proprioceptive.
V.
Yeah.
Ves.
Vestibular.
There.
You see? So it goes in
That's in there.
sometimes.
It's in there.
It's in there somewhere. So we'll look at those again in the future in detail like this, and we'll go to the third group of senses, which you may not have heard of. We'll come on to all that. But yes, pure247radio.org/ALJ, and you can connect with Anne, Lord Jackson, and Santé. Thank you. I'm loving these.
Andy. That's wonderful. Thank you.